multilateral global.
And now we have Sherman Kong, co-founder of GovStack, an open code community that shares digital solutions for the public administration, for the empowerment and welfare of people. He's a consultant for Digital Impact Alliance at the United Nations. And Jan Hinrich is the interviewer. He comes from Beluga linguistic, using language to reach people. But first, we will watch a video to get some context. Thank you.
Sherman Kong es cofundador de la iniciativa GovStack, una comunidad de código abierto que comparte soluciones digitales para mejorar la administración pública por el empoderamiento y bienestar de la gente. Además, ha sido asesor de la Alianza para el Impacto Digital de la Fundación de las Naciones Unidas, proyecto que trabaja en igualar el uso de tecnologías esenciales destinadas al acceso a alimentos, atención médica y derechos democráticos. Anteriormente dirigió la Alianza Científica para la Erradicación de la Malaria, MESA, y fue asesor del Globe Telecom, donde creó nuevas herramientas para fomentar la salud digital. Sherman ha asesorado a organizaciones como Naciones Unidas, diseñando estrategias y arquitecturas de datos para grandes corporaciones y entidades públicas.
¿Me oyes? Sí, ahora. Bienvenido.
Muchísimas gracias.
Welcome to Spain. So as you've seen, we are all international. Yesterday we talked about projects, security, blockchain, etc. But today we are talking about international projects, and I have the pleasure to get to know you more. My interviewee is Sherman Kong, as you've seen. He's a mover and shaker. People who move and change big. And I've known you in the last few days. And we'll be talking in Spanish because we've lived in Spain for a few years. You have a Spanish wife and a Spanish daughter. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Cibervoluntarios. Thank you for having me here. I'd like to also thank the city of Malaga, and secondly, as Hans said, my language skills are not good enough. At least not for professional dialogues. So we will be conducting this dialogue in English.
Thanks a lot for being here. We will talk about public digital infrastructure. Okay, so public digital infrastructure. It was a little bit hard to, okay, so what are we talking about? And we will talk about ethics. We will talk about transparency. We will look into case studies. We will look about advocacy and about global norms and a little bit about the future you see, how digital might change and what you expect from it.
Sure.
Okay, let's dive in it.
Sure. I think we'll try to cover this at half an hour. So I'm not sure if we have enough time for this, but.
Well, this is a lot of topics, but we will dive into it. GovStack. Yesterday you explained to me GovStack is like tech stack for companies, but for governments. Explain me how you came up with that idea, how you founded it, and why.
Yeah, so I cannot give credit to only myself personally. It's been an initiative for multilateral cooperations between the Digital Impact Alliance at the United Nations Foundations, with ITU, which is one of the UN agencies as well, and the government of Estonia and the Economic Development Corporations of Germany. And we came together, or backtrack a little bit, we'd done some background studies in the past when the theme was still around digital transformations, and we noticed that in similar context to Cibervoluntarios, they're trying to close this digital divide that exists between people, there's also digital divide between countries. There's some that are falling behind or being left behind in this global race for digital transformation, or trying to realize the benefits when it comes to digital in a global market. So we sought to study those models in some of the more advanced digital states, how they were able to kind of radically transform their society, and to be able to draw those benefits from an economy that now it's founded by, or at least it has a majority function based on digital. So we studied cases like India, Estonia. We'll talk about this a little bit more next. And we realized that there are some kind of commonalities or thinking around this, and it's the use or adoptions of the concept of digital commons, or in European literature, we call it digital commons. In our initiative, we call it building blocks, but it's the same thing. It's these common components that form the basis of their digital public infrastructure that serves genetic functional needs. So when you reach, or when you go to a health clinic, or when you go to a school and you want to register yourself digitally, there is a registration process that happens to identify you digitally. Same thing when you wanted to pay your taxes, doing renta with the government, how those payment schemes or transactions happen in the back end, and the informational exchanges between public entities and with the private sector as well, and a whole range of other kind of just genetic digital capabilities that form the infrastructural elements of a country. And that helps to really, make them, help afford them to advance in providing better services, more efficient and coordinated services to people, and also reap the benefit of economy that is digitally enabled now by this public infrastructure. So this is what we decided, or we wanted to put together a reference model so that other countries that don't have that technical talent or capabilities upfront to understand how to even start can use this as a single informed frame of reference when it comes to the technical implementations and understanding of these components. So that's one side of the initiative, and the other side is also engaging with these countries that are in need of assistance or would like to learn more, and we become kind of a broker for them to discover open source solutions that other countries have developed and would like to showcase to the global markets and the global audience, as well as countries that have adopted this approach and they want to learn from them directly. But also in the case of development assistance, those countries that do have the political wills to implement this approach, how do we go about financing it? So the financing or donor ecosystems that would stand behind such an approach as well. So it's an emerging topic, and it's been getting a lot of attention, this notion of DPI, or digital public infrastructure, and this is where we've kind of initialized the initiative.
Wonderful. Yeah, we touched a lot of topics already. You just mentioned a couple of things of multilateralism and the importance of helping countries to evolve. What is the status quo of countries? So, 160 countries in the world. How is digitalization of government in the level with the specifications you mentioned before? So what is the level of integration right now of digital infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is something that gets evaluated every year. There's an eGov index published by UNESCO, and what we would like to do, or our motivation, is to help move that needle of those that are further down the list, to be able to move up and provide better public services to people via digital, via e-government. I don't have the global status, a state report on where things are, but that's why we drew on examples like Estonia, like India, that very, very massively different states, a picture of a country, massively different sizes of populations, but they were still able to adopt this kind of approach and transform their country and their economy in a digitally enabled way.
Let's dive into India, for example. What happened in India and why it's a reference?
So we drew on India as an example because of obviously one of their massive population, but I don't know the whole journey of how they arrived to this, but we've been tracking their progress for some time. We drew on we were inspired by their public infrastructure called GovStack, and that's why we kind of also drew inspiration from the tech stack from a private sector point of view and GovStack and other kind of stack nomenclature, and we call ourselves GovStack. And it's a very successful story to tell because they have over 1 billion people, and through their digital identity service called Aadhaar, they were able to almost cover the entire country, and that is a very strong proof point when it comes to resiliency. And I think I was going to touch on this a little bit in our conversation as well. During the pandemic, for example, there are people that were, in economic shocks because of being out of work or cannot travel to work because of physical conditions and so on. And they were able to digitally deliver these social benefits to people because of the fact that there's a wide-scale effect of identifying who are those vulnerable people. And similar, I guess, example, if we jump into the next one about Estonia as well, being able to continue to stay afloat during pandemic times, to deliver classes via virtual classrooms, and being a reference example now in the digital government roundtables in the world, talking about their leadership, their thinking moving forward when it comes to digital democracy, trusted connectivity, and to be able to export their experience and knowledge in solutions like XRO, which is an information exchange platform that they I think co-founded with one of the Scandinavian countries. So these are solutions that help not only transform their society, improve their position in the global scale in terms of digital economy, but also in times of risk and shocks that they were able to stay resilient. And Alexei also mentioned Ukraine, and we've worked with Ukraine quite a bit as well since the beginning. And it's a very interesting example because they didn't approach us asking for assistance when it comes to combating the conflict. They asked us to help promote their digital resilience. So how were they able to still reach out to people that are influenced by the conflicts through digital means? And they wanted to be able to showcase this into the global ecosystem. So we work with them to highlight one of their solutions around registrations or registries of entities and of people, that kind of generic elements in their infrastructure, and compartmentalize it and build that and incorporate it into our collection of references, and be able to help them position themselves when it comes to this dynamics on digital government, or this interest in digital government globally, that Ukraine is also a shining example as well.
Yeah, this is super interesting. So we talked about yesterday how individual products or projects are developed, like in the blockchain area and the security area, the medical area. What is the relation between grassroots projects and GovStack, and why it's important that there's an exchange? Can you guide us a little bit through the ideas, how people can contribute to shape policy?
Yeah, I mean, it's usually like a mentally disconnected thing, like, well, how is my project going to have any influence in a policy level side of things? But all these local activists or technology movements and the emphasis and placement around open source does have a trickle-up effect over time, and the highest level endorsement of open source as a solution was released during the UN Secretary General's roadmap of digital cooperation, where it highlighted what they call digital public goods as solutions that are open source, or data that's open, or standards that are open that fulfill or help to achieve sustainable development goals and respect human rights, and you know, it's done in an open way. Those solutions, they would like to see how they can position those into the work of digital transformation that development partners are investing into. And obviously, in initiatives like GovStack was one of those that try to see how this world of digital public goods and open source solutions at large plays into developing demonstrations through following to these references. So open source solutions or digital public goods, either we seek them out or they come and through kind of a compliance or testing environment, they're able to ascertain what is the level of suitability or compliance that they
Hello?
Hello.
Okay,
Yeah,
here we're
back.
back again. Just five minutes for me or 5 minutes for questions now? Perfect. Ask your questions. How can you connect with your projects, with government? Yolanda, please. Right.
Sí, hola. Hola, Sherman. Me parece complicadísimo el poder.
So this is what impacts me is how to use this strategy on such large governments. But when you develop a strategy for a whole region or a whole government, what do they care about the most? Their main concern, so to say. Where do they place the citizen? Where do they, or how do they want that integration? Do they want to use it to control the citizens, for tax control, to promote interaction or engagement? Did you find a common parameter in some regions? And then as technology itself, what is the highest priority? To make the citizens understand the tools, or is security their main concern? I'd like to know what you think about it or what you find out.
I guess it's an interesting one because there's a diverse range of interest from countries. Some want to stay, you know, current and competitive when it comes to the global digital economy participation. Some come from the point of view of, you know, political will, or seeing that there is a significant social needs in country. For example, one of the interesting or most used entry point is financial inclusion or social protection. So there are a lot of, in developing economies, there are a lot of people that are unbanked, so meaning that they don't have a bank account. So and they don't have a formal way of qualifying for banking accounts and so on. So how do we use digital as a mean to include these people, to make sure that they understand the value of savings and participate digitally into the formal economy and formal exchanges of financial transactions as well. So this is one of the development topics that a lot of times you see actors like World Bank use to identify where they would like to direct investments. Other cases might be you know, digital health, or you know, promoting information asymmetries through rural farming and agriculture. Whatever the use case or whatever the topic of mind floated to the priorities of the government, that's a good entry point for us to say, don't only think about this individually, because if you're enabling your infrastructure digitally when it comes to resolving one use case, but approaching it from the point of view that you need digital identity after this use case downstream, you need digital payment gateways or scheme after this use case, then you prepare yourself for all those other services that you might want to develop digitally as well down the line. So that's one of the ways that we can identify appetite from countries. Obviously, they need to have understood that they wanted to challenge their own thinking of how digital has been done in the past, not only individually, but now in the form of an infrastructural layer. But there are a lot of conversations bilaterally and multilaterally in contexts that they can learn from. So, for example, WSIS, which is happening in Geneva now, is also one of those global gatherings where countries learn from each other of things that are happening. And in parallel in Madrid now, there's the GovTech for Impact Congress as well, where partners like OECD and GovStack is also represented there as well. So there are these conversational opportunities too. And I'm sorry, I forgot the second question.
I think there's another question.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. As somebody who is originally from Estonia, but now lives here in lovely Malaga, I have a question motivated...
30 seconds.
Thanks. I have a question motivated by, from self-interest. How would you, as somebody who has also lived in Spain, as I understand, how would you assess the current situation of Spanish digital state and digital society, and what could be done to accelerate this process?
I think this is a great question for Cibervoluntarios to address in some way. I guess there are people that are still catching up to know how to use services digitally. Right? Not a lot of people understood that now there are a lot of different Department of Health, they have their own apps, and through that app you can find out your prescriptions, find out your next appointments, find out your test results. But people that don't have that level of digital literacy, obviously they would need support, like from Cibervoluntarios. In the case of Estonia, everybody is super well aware and knowledgeable around how to use digital services, right? I think there was a success story, or I don't know if it was last year, when election happened, there was the first time that more than half of the population voted digitally, right? So there was a beautiful example showcase how a small country, only 1 million people, can still leverage digital in a very efficient way. I don't know how to pinpoint particular challenges I would like to address when it comes to observing the Spanish context without any political ramification. Let's say I want to make sure that I stay neutral on this. So yeah, I mean, engaging with local digital literature, I think, is one of the ways that we can improve.
Ya está. So, to sum it up, we have Sherman here. It's sometimes difficult to make the connection between local projects and government projects. Grab the opportunity. You can go to GitHub. The standards, I understand from GovStack, are there. The website is very informative as well. Make sure that you are aligned, because you might change how other countries work. That was my final thought. Thanks a lot.